William Robbie Bryan were trying to make a citizen's arrest after Arbery was seen at a home construction site, even though he was unarmed and nothing was taken. They also claim self-defense. The prosecution blasting that argument, telling the jury, quote, "You can't start it," and claim self-defense, and they started this. The men are each facing 9 charges, including felony murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment. The trial featuring graphic images of Arbery being shot and pictures of his wounded body. At times, the images too much for his mother and father, forcing them to cover their eyes or leave the courtroom. Once again, we are listening right now. Judge Timothy Walmsley has called everybody into the courtroom here, and we're standing by. Let's see if we can bring in Steve Osunsami, our senior national correspondent, who's been following this story from the very beginning. Steve, as we're waiting for the judge to address the courtroom there, this morning we did see those requests from the jurors to look at 2 video clips and the 911 call. This was the first request that we had heard from the jury. Talk about the significance of that.
All right, sure.
Well, you know, there were a lot of people looking at the tea leaves here about what that possibly meant. I can tell you with the 911 call that the person who was on that call was Gregory McMichael, the father, and he was calling police. You hear him in the background yelling at Ahmaud Arbery to stop. In that call, if you're really trying to look into it to discern what the jury might be thinking, it's clear that they were focusing on that call on the actions of the father and how he was responding to Ahmaud Arbery. The defense has claimed that they just wanted to know what he was up to, what was going on, but the tone in that call told an entirely different story. It was much more hostile than that.
And Steve, stand by. We're listening in here. Judge Timothy Walmsley, there we saw the defendant standing.
Ladies and gentlemen,
and
welcome back. Madam foreperson, I understand you have reached a verdict as to each defendant.
We have, Your Honor.
If you could please hand your verdict forms to the sheriff. All right, I'm going to go ahead and address each one of these verdict forms separately. The first verdict form I have is the State of Georgia versus Travis McMichael. Mr. McMichael, please stand. Verdict is as follows. In the Superior Court of Glenn County, State of Georgia, the State of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, case number CR 000433. Jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. I'm going to ask that whoever just made an outburst be removed from the court, please. As this court has indicated, I ask that there be no outbursts in the court, and I expect as much from the gallery. Please respect the court's desire for this as we move forward. If you feel like you need to make a comment or otherwise demonstrate with respect to the verdict, I do ask that you step out of the courtroom now. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. The jury find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Dated this 24th day of November, 2021, signed by the foreperson. Have a seat. As to Gregory McMichael, in the Superior Court of Glenn County, the state of Georgia versus Greg McMichael, case number CR20000433. Jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael not guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. This 24th day of November, 2021, signed by the foreperson. As to William R. Bryan, in the Superior Court of Glenn County, state of Georgia versus William R. Bryan, case number CR20000433, jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Signed this 24th day of November by the foreperson. Go ahead, MC. Court having read the verdicts and accepted the verdicts, anything from the state?
No, Your Honor, nothing from the state.
Anything from the defense?
We ask the jury be polled, Your Honor.
Do all defendants ask the jury be polled? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask each of you individually a set of 2 questions with respect to the verdicts that I have just read. If you could please respond when you hear your juror number. Juror number 1, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, sir.
Juror number 2, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, sir.
I can't. Okay, 2. Juror number 3, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes.
Juror number 4, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, sir.
Juror number 5, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 7, You have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 8, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 9, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 10, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 11, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 12, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, Your Honor.
And juror 16, you have heard the verdicts read. Were these your verdicts then, and are these your verdicts now?
Yes, sir.
The jury has been polled. Anything further from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
From Greg McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
From Mr. Bryan?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, what that means with the court having accepted your verdict is that your role in this case is now at an end. What we're going to do today is I'm going to have all of you, the panel and the 3 alternates, go ahead and retire into the jury room. I'm going to address a couple matters logistically with you in the jury room once we get done here. But before we do that, and before I excuse you, I do want to thank you publicly for your service here in Glynn County. It has been a long trial, and I appreciate the fact that you have been attentive. You've listened to the evidence, and that is what we ask in this court. It's a very simple ask in a very complex way, so it's appreciated. When we all got together, I say we all got together, when we got together at different times, I said that I was going to thank you a number of times and how I was going to tell you I do truly appreciate your time here. Hopefully you understand why I said that when we started. I do also hope that you got a little bit of an insight into what goes on in a trial and maybe understand a little bit more of how important it is for members of our community to come down and be part of this process and serve as jurors in this community. So again, thank you for that service. And I'll come address you all in just a moment. You are excused.
All right, for the jury.
And if you're just joining us right now, that was Judge Timothy Walmsley reading the verdicts there in the trial in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, the 3 defendants, Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan, to some degree guilty in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. Now, it's complicated here. You see the 9 different charges for each defendant. Travis McMichael found guilty on all charges, ranging from malice murder, the most serious, down to aggravated assault and false imprisonment. His father, Gregory McMichael, found not guilty of malice murder, but guilty on the rest of the counts. And then you saw William Roddy Bryan. He's the man who recorded that video. He was the man who was following in that other vehicle. Found not guilty on malice murder, felony murder, and there was another one in there as well. But it's a variety of charges. The bottom line here, in this case of Ahmaud Arbery, this case that was heard across the country, these men were found guilty to some degree involved in his killing. Let's go ahead and bring in our senior national correspondent, Steve Osunsami, who's been following this. He's outside the courthouse right now in Georgia. And Steve, just talk about the significance of this verdict. It's a mixed verdict, but I would imagine the Arbery family, this is what they were looking to hear, the justice they've been calling for.
So in court, as the verdict was read, the person who you heard screaming out, according to the pool reporters who were in there watching this very closely, was the father of Ahmaud Arbery, Marcus Arbery. He screamed out that this was a long time coming, and then the judge ordered the bailiff to have him removed from the courtroom. He walked out on his own. I'm told that Wanda Cooper, Ahmaud Arbery's mother, was holding her hands with people who she was seated with in the courtroom, praying as this verdict was read. And when that first guilty verdict was read, you could hear the cries and the screams in the air here where I'm standing right now, across the street from the courthouse. They're still screaming in joy right now as we speak because of this verdict. And it is somewhat of a mixed verdict, but not really, because only one of the murder charges, it only took one to guarantee any of the defendants who got that murder charge life in prison. That's the minimum sentence for a murder charge in the state of Georgia, and all three of them will be looking at that at this point.
Yeah, these defendants made the case that this was a citizen's arrest, that they were defending themselves, but the prosecution said you can't claim self-defense if you are the aggressor, if you provoke the situation. And as we see here, the jury agreeing with the prosecution. So let's go ahead and bring in our chief ABC News legal analyst, Dan Abrams. Again, we're trying to just explain the complexities of these mixed verdicts here, but what's the bottom line to you? Are you surprised at all?
I don't think there are any real surprises here. So let's understand exactly what they've decided. They've basically determined, based on the facts, who was responsible for what. Travis McMichael was the one who actually fired the shotgun, and they're saying he's more culpable here. He's guilty of the highest form of murder in this case. Gregory McMichael, his father, guilty of all of the other charges. Now remember, the 4 felony murder charges all connect to the 4 felonies below it. Felony murder means in the course of committing a felony, someone is killed, and therefore you can be charged with murder for just having the intent to have committed the felony. So you see that Gregory McMichael is convicted of all of the felonies, and then obviously of all of the felony murders in connection with that. And then you go over to Roddy Bryan's case, and you see that the one count he was not convicted of, which was both the felony of aggravated assault with a shotgun, he was not convicted of the felony murder count in connection with that. Why? These jurors clearly believed that he wasn't responsible for the use of the shotgun, that he may not have known that they necessarily had a gun, but that he was guilty of unlawful imprisonment, criminal attempt to commit a felony, all of the other charges, and that since death ensued, that's felony murder. But as Steve said, bottom line here is they're all convicted of murder. They're all facing the possibility of life in prison.
Dan, I want to turn to our ABC News contributor and legal analyst, Shauna Lloyd. She's joining us as well. And Shauna, I wanted to just point out the testimony from Travis McMichael, as Dan pointed out. He's the one who pulled the trigger. You know, the defense put him on the stand. Looking at it now, was that perhaps a mistake, a misfire for the defense in some way or another? The prosecution picked apart what he said and was able to expose some inconsistencies between his testimony in court and what he initially told police.
So typically in these types of cases are occurring, the defendant is the only person, the person who did the shooting and is claiming self-defense is the only person that can refute all of this testimony and evidence that has come in. So this was his only shot at appealing to the jury in this particular case. His previous testimony and his previous statements to the officers were not in a very good light, and the only person that could have tried to dispute them would have been him. So I think they had a one shot and they took it.
Steve Osunsami, I'd like to bring you back into this conversation.
You got my
here.
email?
Steve, if you can hear me, I just wanted to bring you back here because you've been covering this case for so long. Race, of course, was at the center of this case from the very beginning. We saw the prosecution pointed out saying that because he was a black man running down the street, that is why Ahmaud Arbery is dead. There was controversy inside the courtroom based on some comments that one of the defense attorneys said. We know that there have been protests outside the courtroom. Steve, can you just break down how much of a factor race was in this case and the trial from the beginning?
It defined the case. It was a part of the case from the very beginning. And the prosecutor didn't lean as hard on the issue of race in her addresses to the jury as much as you might have expected. But she did say, she kept using the word driveway assumptions, that what happened on the part of all three of the men who have just been convicted is that they all made driveway assumptions about the young black man who they saw at a construction site walking away from the construction site. She said more than once that he would not have been seen as suspicious in the eyes of those men if he were white. And in fact, that there were other people seen at this same neighborhood construction site who were white, who were seen on camera, who were seen at that construction site at night, who did not raise this level of alarm and today are still very much alive. So race absolutely played a role in this trial. And here's a little bit that wasn't included in trial. We also have a prosecutor down here who is in serious trouble, who has been indicted on her role in this investigation. The other thing, jurors didn't really get to hear that Gregory McMichael was a former police officer. They didn't get to hear about his relationship with the people who were investigating this crime, and how many people feel that what happened is that this was a cover-up to protect who many people who would say the good old boys down there who were responsible for what happened. So race absolutely played a role in this, and it's one of the reasons why this trial is such an important one for Americans to watch, because there are so many people who would say that one of the things highlighted in this incident is this idea in America that if you look like Ahmaud Arbery, that you are going to be seen as more suspicious than you would if you were someone of a different race in the exact same situation and same position, whether it's a shopping mall, whether you're driving down the street, whether it's a grocery store, or in this case, an unsecured construction site. So race absolutely plays into this case. It's an integral part of the prosecution's case, how they describe this to the jurors. It was also an issue in the jury. There was only one black member who was selected in this jury. The judge in this case even accused the defense of bias in striking the black jurors, so race became an issue again. One of the defense lawyers complained because the family was bringing black preachers into the few seats that they had available in the courtroom. This became a racial concern. It was constant, and I will say that, you know, for people watching this after the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, I would say that there are a lot of Americans who feel that their faith in the justice system might be restored a little bit because of this verdict. It's going to be an important one, I think, for Americans and black Americans, of course, in particular.
And Steve, you pointed out there that there are some things that the jury never did get to hear about this case. And so I'd like to bring back Dan Abrams, because we know that these three men will be back in federal court early next year. What comes next in this case? Because it's not over.
Right. There are going to be these federal charges that are going to be brought against them. And remember, in a lot of these cases, these high-profile events where race is such a critical factor, people say, well, there's going to be a federal investigation. And typically, nothing comes of it. Why? Because the standard is very high for federal prosecutors to decide that a separate federal prosecution is warranted. Here, they believe that it crossed that level, that it crossed that threshold. And as a result, there is going to be a separate trial. But I think the next big moment, obviously, in this particular case will be the sentencing. And I think that when it comes to felony murder, which is what two of the three have been convicted of, a life sentence typically means life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. We shall see if that ends up being the case. But as we move forward with this case, just remember that this particular case, the one we just watched, was the big one. And it seems to me that the jurors didn't have that hard a time deciding. Why do I say that? In high-profile cases, you find that jurors want to be even more meticulous. Here you had 3 defendants and 9 charges. And so they were able to go through those with 3 separate verdicts, 3 different verdicts for each one of them in a comparatively short period of time, considering how long this case was. And that says to me that there probably was not a lot of dissension on that jury, that these jurors came together, agreed on the facts and the law and the result pretty quickly.
Shauna Lloyd, I'd like to bring you in as well and just kind of get your big picture here, because there was so much exposed in this case. We're talking about issues with self-defense, also making a citizen's arrest, also how law enforcement agencies respond to incidents like this, how quickly they respond. How much of a game changer will this case be going forward?
I think this case is going to be a game changer in the sense that if we even start with where the citizens arrest law originated, it was really for escaping slaves. So then to have these three, white males see an African-American male running and no other information other than he's running. He's clearly not carrying anything. He's just running. And the fact that he doesn't respond to them in a manner in which they feel like he should, that they then further felt like they had the right to stop him and ultimately cause his death, that says a lot about where the morals and where the views are of the people within and those persons. And I think that's what you're seeing the African-American community respond to, is that they recognize that there is a difference in the way they're treated versus the way others are treated in these situations. So to get this verdict and to know that there are members and these jury persons that decided that that type of behavior is not acceptable, it does not fit our laws. They could not identify any crime that he was guilty of, yet they still chased him. And I think this verdict reflects that people can look as reasonable persons at this situation and think to themselves, you might have stayed in the car, you might have called the law enforcement, you might have done a lot of things. But when you actually are chasing him down to later cause his death, this was clearly something that was a violation of the laws that the state illustrated for the jury. So I think going forward, this is going to be a game changer, because I think this sends the message that we as ordinary citizens, sure, we have a duty to protect our property, we have a duty to protect our neighbors, but that duty does not mean that we can then resort to vigilante behavior. And I think that is a message that will be carried through, because this jury has shown that the reasonable persons don't think that that's acceptable behavior.
Shauna Lloyd, thanks so much. Steve Osunsami, I'll give you the final word here. Are you getting any reaction yet from the Arbery family or anybody out there outside the courtroom?
So we're definitely hearing the cheers. We're hearing the tears. And I'll add a few other things that, that we were just talking about. One is that this decision essentially says that it's no longer or never been legal in Georgia to stop a black man with a gun and expect him to stop and then shoot him dead and then be able to claim self-defense. I want to underline that, of course, there are more than one family who is suffering here, 3 families that are suffering. One in particular, of course, who will never get their son back, and probably thankful today that, in their opinion, what they see here, what happened in court, the justice that they were looking for has been served. Whit?
Steve, our thanks to you once again. And a reminder to the viewers, you just saw there the verdict come down for the 3 men accused of and now convicted of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Travis McMichael, his father Greg McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan, all found guilty on multiple counts. We will have full coverage on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. You can also get breaking news alerts on our ABC News app. And then tonight, we'll have a full roundup on World News Tonight. For now, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a good day.